everyone, Jessica Payne here, and welcome to Jessica Payne Live. I am your host, Jessica Payne. How's everybody doing? Stephen, how are you? Karen, how are you? Teresa, how are you? I already have some of my favorite people on the planet right here. Thanks for joining. Very quickly, if this is the first time you've ever heard my voice, maybe you're tuning in from the podcast, maybe you caught me on YouTube, or you're here on Facebook, welcome. This show is all about kind of linking together the magical worlds of the crazy worlds of running a business, being an entrepreneur, and authenticity. So today's show is all about leveraging this amazing, powerful tool I use called live streaming, specifically for my PR brethren. My background, if you did not know, I came up through communications. So this is a nod to how to use live streaming for PR. And I'm going to do my best to answer some questions that I've laid out. But if you have questions, now is the time. And let's say you're listening to me on the replay, you're watching me on the replay, you still have time to ask questions. So today's episode of Jessica Payne Live, again, is all about live streaming for PR. I'm going to share some tips and tricks I've learned since I started live streaming. I'm going to talk specifically about PR, and then I'm going to show some really cool examples of organizations that have been using live streaming. There's sort of this myth that you have to have breaking news or be a big brand to use live streaming. And I'm going to tell you, I'd like to think of myself as a great brand, but I'm not a huge brand. And I certainly haven't used it really for breaking news. So I'm here to tell you that there are so many ways to use live streaming. I'm going to walk you through here specifically today for PR. And I think I'm going to start the show by just doing a quick overview of PR. You know, I think marketers have embraced live streaming a lot more, at a lot more rapid pace than PR. And I don't know why that's the case, perhaps because they might be more in-house, maybe they're closer to the content. But I think as a PR professional, former PR professional, we're trained communicators, and we have a massive opportunity to use live streaming for our brands. So that's what today's all about. Karen's saying, great topic. Thank you. Thank you. I hope you're well. I hope Southern California is treating you well, Karen. And again, if you want to be a guest on the show, all you need to do is you can direct message me the word guest. I've set up a handy dandy chat bot that will bring you right on. If you don't want to be a guest and you have a question, you can submit that to me, and you can totally submit it anonymously if you want. All about PR. Not everyone I know touches PR, so another reason why I wanted to just talk about PR. And when I say PR, I mean public relations. All right, so if you have any questions about that, lob them over. All right, so why don't we just kick it off? Why the heck am I talking about live streaming for PR? Well, here in Los Angeles, I belong to a few PR-related organizations. Like I said, my career, I came up through public relations. For the first 15 years of my career, I was at some great public relations agencies working on consumer brands, B2B brands. And so that is really how I was trained as a communicator before going out on my own. Now I'm more in the digital marketing space, but I still partner with PR agencies. They're my favorite people on the planet. You know, despite the stereotype you might hear in Hollywood about PR, everyone I've met has taught me a ton. We are absolutely hell-bent on integrity and honesty and transparency. Those are the best PR practitioners you ever want to hire, are those that will really push you to be authentic. And which brings us back into, I think, really just the latest technical evolution of communications, which is live streaming. If you think about the world before social media, getting on broadcast media was kind of the golden egg. That was what you wanted to shoot for if you were in PR. It used to be like, get me on Oprah was the famous ask when people hired a PR team. It's like, if you could get your client on Oprah and getting on that national broadcast, then that was a home run. The world has obviously evolved since then. Ironically, getting any partnership with Oprah is still seen as a big deal, but we have a ton more different channels. And what I like about it now is that, you know, the media are no longer the gatekeepers. You and I can start a show. I know, Karen, you've got your own show, Little White Lie, and I know, Stephen, you have several shows, Blabbing for Britain, Be Live in 5, and a few others. the technology is no longer the barrier to reaching a global audience. And I think that's what live streaming really has a benefit to do. Here's the thing though. There's still a definite bar that has been set. You still want to be a professional. You still want to have things like a format, having guests on, having experts on. Value is still number one. Live streams aren't, sales pitches. They're not webinars. And I think the brands that have discovered that, the successful brands that have discovered that are the ones that are still here. And that's really at the forefront of PR. Back in school, PR 101, as a freshman, I learned a couple of things. One was the number one rule in public relations is know your audience. Because everything you're going to do is really going to need to appeal to them and to bring them value. And so the more you know your audience, the better you can be at meeting them halfway, starting conversations, anticipating their needs. And a smart communications professional will kind of always be thinking about their audience. And that's their role, so that they can advise their client on, will this resonate? No, actually, this is what they care about. How can we connect? And that's those are the award-winning communications programs. And there are many other great programs that have never won awards. Okay, so live streaming is literally just the newest channel, honestly. Conversations are a key part of live streaming. Again, that's why I think PR professionals have a leg up, because we're trained conversationalists. I think the biggest barrier to that just might be probably figuring out who goes on camera. That is my hunch why maybe a lot of PR teams haven't embraced it, because PRs are typically behind the scenes, but that doesn't mean that a PR team can't own a program. So why don't I kick off by just showing you two examples, and I'm going to jump around my agenda a little bit today. Why don't I show you two examples so you can get a visual of what other brands or organizations are using for live stream. Because I think the big myth is that, again, you have to be a big brand or have breaking news to use live streamings. Because when a lot of us who maybe haven't live streamed before, when I say live stream, I mean live video, broadcasting live over social, we may think we need to have a press conference. That's actually a classic PR communications tactic, but you don't have to have breaking news. You don't have to have a massive celebrity. In fact, there are so many more brands just using regular people like you and me, experts in their own field, who frankly are one step closer to actually relating with their audience, that I think are actually succeeding. Doesn't hurt to have a big name on a show. Certainly doesn't hurt to have breaking news, but it's not a requirement of live streaming. That's my first thing there. I'm going to go ahead and share my desktop. So give me 2 ticks. Karen, while I set this up, any questions on live streaming? Stephen, any questions? Big shout out to everyone. I know PR is a little different. Considering my background, I don't know if I've ever spoken about PR before. But yeah, I actually, the saying goes, people fall into PR. I actually majored in PR communications at Boston University. No one ever really majors in PR. That's the other deal. And then concentration in social psych. So I am fascinated with why people think and what they do and whatnot. So, but that is my, before social media, I worked in good old fashioned PR for a while, and I loved it. I thought I was going to be a fancy Hollywood publicist, and I worked at an agency for 2 weeks and I hated it. I was like, this is not me. All right, you're seeing a couple things right now, but give me 2 seconds and I will toggle this to make sure you can see. I'm going to actually bring them up individually here. All right, so what you are seeing now is my handy-dandy desktop and probably a brand, let's be real, that you know. My first example, because who doesn't want to talk about donuts? My first example, because if you're like me, you learn by example. I wanted to show you 2 brands. One is a consumer brand. This is Dunkin' Donuts, and then I'm going to show you a nonprofit, because I think if you run an organization, a nonprofit, you have a massive opportunity. I think live streaming should just be part of what you're doing. Okay, so remember the PR fundamentals. Know your audience, right? So here's a really cool thing. Dunkin' Donuts, you have to give them props. They're a really cool brand. They understand the value of social media. They make pastries and donuts and coffee. They're not changing the world, but they are in certain parts of the US and now the world staples. I used to live back east. I used to live in Boston. Dunkin' Donuts is like, it's a household name. It's almost a religion. You just go to Dunkin'. It's part of basically everyone's morning ritual, next to Starbucks. So Dunkin' Donuts, or just simply known as DD or Dunkin', is just that the brand you grow up with in certain parts of the U.S. And some other brands, or it's sort of that loyalty, like White Castle or Waffle House, or brands like that, where you just can't kind of imagine day-to-day life, or a guilty pleasure. So 2 years ago, Dunkin' did actually one of the first live streams that I was sort of aware of in terms of a consumer brand. What you're looking at here is a shot of their test kitchen, which again, Dunkin' Donuts is kind of perfect for this, because it's kind of like, do you really want to know how they make their donuts? I do. But if you like donuts in general, or if you like Dunkin' Donuts, like, who wouldn't want to check out their test kitchen? It's a perfect kind of PR tactic, but this is really marketing too. I would imagine that the PR team and the marketing team work together, and they're like, let's do a live. Well, what can we do a live of? So what they did was they shot their test kitchen, and I've just hit it on pause, and I'll click around maybe like a little slideshow. I'll hit play. I don't think you can hear it. But what they're doing is, for around Valentine's Day, they did interviews. They made a huge Valentine's Day cupcake. And at the end of the day, they had a call to action. And if you've watched any of my shows in the past, you've seen that, I always encourage people to include calls to actions. But Dunkin' Donut is a great example of their consumer brand. They decided that what they would use for PR to just raise awareness of their brand, share word of mouth, and probably just open them up to maybe a younger demographic, or maybe they're going into new markets. This is a really smart strategy if they wanted to get outside of that New England area, or maybe into other markets they're not really a part of, like here in California. So this is basically, it's kind of like a stunt in a way. They created news out of kind of bringing the outside in, which is one of my favorite PR tactics. It's also a marketing tactic, and it's brilliant. I'm thinking the overhead really didn't cost much. It looks like they're literally shooting on a smartphone. And again, the tactic at the end of the day was, and you can see up here, they say our first ever live tour of the DD test kitchen, and a big announcement for engaged Valentines. So another kind of rule of thumb for PR is like, is it newsworthy? Is it timely? Is it engaging? Does it resonate with the audience? And if you think about it, this was like 2 years ago. So you have to think, like, they probably didn't have any competition. They're probably one of the first live streams on Valentine's Day 2 years ago. Like, really, really smart. And all it took was just someone in their marketing or their PR department, communications department, to say, hey, there's this new technology we can live stream. Let's try it out. So it's one of my favorites. Okay, great example. Who doesn't know what Dunkin' Donuts is? Okay, so how about I show you another example just to kind of like get your feet wet. And here's something a little different. So we're going from a consumer brand to a charity or an organization. This is the San Diego Humane Society. And I paused it because who doesn't love Yorkies? I know I'm totally appealing to the base right here, donuts and puppies, but kind of an easy thing. There are so many other examples of live streams. But again, and funny enough, this was about a year ago. So some of these are great examples. There's live streams every day, more and more brands. But again, these are just two of my favorite. So the San Diego Humane Society is just like any other humane society. It's based here, actually in Southern California. And here they're just talking about a bunch of Yorkies they had for adoption. And I'm going to click around just so you can see. They started off with kind of a local law enforcement. They're showing the little babies getting checked out. They go over tips and tricks for dogs. They go over information for potential adoptees, right? So they had a purpose. They're following the same rules that Dunkin' Donuts had. They're bringing the outside in, which I think is the whole rule of thumb for live streaming. Can you bring the outside in? Can you put experts in front of your audience because you want to know your audience? What's the story you want to tell? Is there a call to action? It doesn't have to be salesy. People are going to either tune in or tune out. And again, I think the whole factor of if you kind of invite the world to come in and see the inner workings of an organization or give them a first look at something, that's the value right there. And if they're a brand that they recognize, maybe I'm a donor to the San Diego Humane Society. Maybe I am a dog owner and I have a vested interest in the Humane Society. Or maybe I just live in San Diego and I want to know what another organization is doing. Well, I'm going to tune in, right? Or let's say I'm a fan of Dunkin', or I live in New England, or let's say I'm kind of making decisions about what kind of coffee I want to drink, and I was like, should I stick with Dunkin'? Should I go to Starbucks? Well, I really like the people at Dunkin'. Like, the coffee might be a little questionable, but it's a cultural thing, right? Or let's say I'm just, I love Valentine's Day, or I'm watching the news. Like, these are all great PR tactics. And let's not forget what is basically the home run of any PR campaign are the metrics. Okay, it's one thing to have a great story, but how do these perform? Just looking at the Humane Society for San Diego, it looks like they had around 2,000 views. They had over 600 shares and 66. Looks like they had 66,000 views. Sorry, and 2,000 kind of in live stream kind of actions like likes and hearts and whatnot. Those are great numbers. And again, I think their overhead was probably just time. It looked like someone just grabbed their smartphone or some sort of camera. They walked around and they probably just coordinated the whole thing, but it doesn't look like they spent a tremendous amount of money. So you can't buy that sort of awareness on social media unless you do something like an ad, and it just doesn't work in this setup. Aren't those really cool examples? What do you think? Puppies and donuts. I know I'm really appealing to the heartstrings, right, you guys? Puppies and donuts. There are a bunch of other brands doing live streams every day too. I've seen, and I say this like every show because I'm such a fan of it. Clearly, I'm a fan of live streaming, but it wouldn't make it's like I wouldn't waste your time, and frankly, I wouldn't waste my time with a channel that I didn't see that I didn't believe had a tremendous opportunity for you and your business. And maybe I don't want to bury the lead. Maybe I talk a little bit about the results that I've seen, because I'm basically, if you're skeptical about live streaming, or if it seems like it takes a tremendous amount of time, I'm not going to lie, it does. Like anything new you start for your program, until you get it down as kind of like muscle memory, it's going to take time. But I can guarantee you, the more you do it, and I'm sure, Karen, you can attest to this, you've got a long running show, you've been live streaming forever. You're certainly an expert in this space. It becomes practice. And like anything, if you can get ahead of it, it doesn't become like recreating the wheel every time. You just kind of run into this, you form this rhythm. You can think of ideas for shows easier. You can create a series out of multiple shows. You can bring guests on. You can invite them back on. If, like anything, if you know you have something coming down the pipe for your business, you can time it to a certain show. So when I launched my course, Live Show Mastery, which is about live streaming, I made sure to schedule several shows around that. One of them was like, how do you go on Facebook Live in 5 minutes? I made it timely, right? Because I think anyone watching that show would have probably asked, well, how easy is it for me to go live, right? You can be strategic. And that's the programs that are strategic are the ones that win, are the ones that are successful. So I'm a huge fan. I always say put purpose behind every second you spend on social media. Putting purpose, the whole way you do that is just getting ahead of things and being strategic. Those are my PR routes showing strategy is the number one tool we use. RJ, you're saying that's true, like working a muscle, it gets easier as you go. Totally. RJ Redden, Black Belt Bots, also has a great show, live streaming, Kindred Spirit as well, all about messenger bots. If you want to know how a messenger bot works, just type the word guest. Message me the word guest if you're on Facebook right now. If you're on YouTube, come over to my Facebook page at Jessica Payne Official. I'll link to it in the comments. Or if you're listening to my podcast, you just go to my website and you can find the show there if you're curious as heck to see how a chatbot works. Who helped me set that up? RJ Redden. Boom. How you doing, RJ? Did you like the donut example or the dog example better? Hard question, difficult question. What's better, puppies or donuts? Are you shocked that I don't have cats on here? I know. It'd be too easy. Too easy. I'm just bringing up the rest of my agenda here, taking a quick break. If you're just tuning in, I'm talking about live streaming for PR because it's a massive tool. The overhead is like nothing. Here's the thing about live streaming. You can do it from your smartphone. Like anything, the more you pay for equipment or the more you invest in maybe third-party software, you could probably do and unlock a few more bells and whistles, but you technically don't need that to start. If you have a smartphone and an okay internet connection and maybe a pair of earbuds, you can do a live stream right now. I just invite you to just like whip out a notepad and like write down your thoughts at first. And there are things you can do to frame your show. I talk about this in my course, intros and outros or whatnot. Like anything, you want to make sure it's professional. But technically, the technology is no longer the barrier. RJ, you're saying definitely the dog example, heart. Yeah, that's true. You do have doggies. I had to ask. I don't know. I'm kind of siding toward Duncan. Who doesn't like a leaning tower of donuts? Gail is saying my muscles are out of shape. That's okay. So are mine. You ask me to do other things in the marketing mix, and I'll be like, I'm a little out of shape. Like my podcast is humming, but it'd been a while. I'd set it on the shelf. Like anything, you just pick it up and you run with it. Gail, I totally and absolutely believe that you can live stream easy peasy. The majority of live streaming is really just organizing your thoughts. And for me, it's booking my guests. Those are the biggest part of running a show. But it just takes a life of its own. And I swear it gets easier and easier. So talk about live streaming and strategy. Okay, one of the other bullets I wanted to talk about today was how to incorporate live streaming into your existing content strategy. And if you're in PR, you probably create something called an editorial calendar. It could be a Word document or Excel grid. It is probably assigned to the social media person on your team. Maybe you have several people working on it, depending on how many channels you're on. And it's basically content creation. You're writing your posts or your tweets, and essentially what you're doing is you're kind of scheduling it out. And for the past 4 or 5 years, even longer in social media, maybe 7 or 8, that's been kind of what you hang your hat on from a PR standpoint, from a content creation standpoint. I still use editorial calendars for my clients. It creates a steady drumbeat of content. Basically, what we used to hang our hat on was just the editorial content. Monthly content, you schedule it out, you want to be somewhat active and appear active on channels. But because social media is changing, and now things like Facebook's algorithm actually emphasizes conversation over certain types of content, PR teams are now kind of scratching their heads in terms of like, well, what do we do editorially? What kind of content do we need to create? And here's the thing. Live streaming is the perfect answer to that. For a couple of reasons. One is I'm now spending less time social media marketing than I ever did with greater results. So I used to spend time, and there'd be weeks where I would just be like sitting there scratching my head, like, what am I going to post today that's like smart or at least gets read? And that used to be kind of what you needed. You'd get ahead of it. Maybe you'd post a week in advance and you'd schedule it out, and you get likes and clicks and shares, and it was great. 2, 3, 4 years, you just hang your hat on it. That was all you needed. Well, about a year ago, I was noticing like I wasn't getting any engagement on content that I used to get a ton of engagement for. And again, that was around the time Facebook's algorithm was like, we no longer prefer this content, we prefer this content. And that's really what got me to started to look outside and look at live streaming. Here's the thing. I now spend less than 2 hours a week on all of my social media for my brand versus I used to spend like up to an hour a day. And you can add that up. I now have like, I can't do the math. I now have like hours and hours back and available that I can spend doing other stuff, servicing other clients, maybe coming up with a new, maybe playing in new areas, creating other types of content. So I went essentially from like 7 hours to 2 hours. That's 5 hours back that I can now do anything, or maybe do nothing at all. That's the thing. 2 hours a week. 1 hour is this 60 minutes. My lives are typically an hour, 60 minutes. I typically spend about 30 minutes the week prior kind of researching my next show, maybe following up with the previous show, and then I'll spend 30 minutes after maybe the rest of the week following up with conversation. 2 hours all in. Sometimes it's actually less than that. And here's the thing, I'm getting more views, more likes, more shares, more engagement. I'm now getting back in front of viewers that I wasn't in front of for like more than a year. And I'm seeing new clients come in and new revenue come in. So the hard numbers, if you want hard numbers, my engagement increased by 130%. That's just on Facebook, 130%. And I know this because I looked right in Facebook Insights. I did a comparison. I compared my engagement from sort of day zero to that point. And I actually compared it to the previous. Facebook Insights are great for analytics. 130% increase in engagement. I also looked at my reach because I was actually curious to see, all right, am I getting in front of new eyeballs? Am I just kind of like playing to my base? Like, what's going on? Since starting live streaming, that increased my reach by a factor of 10. Unless I ran an ad campaign, like there's really no other way I could have done that. But what I liked about it was like the only cost to me was really just my time, which was a lot of time at first when I was learning. But essentially, if you think about it, 2 hours instead of 7 with 10 times the reach and 130% increase in engagement. If you're a PR person listening right now, I know you're going to like that because less time with greater results is what we're all after. And here's the thing, it's because it works for me because I've finally found my rhythm. The topic jives with me. It jives with my audience. Because if it didn't jive with you, then I wouldn't be getting these numbers. Okay, so that's all feedback and data. So if any of you run a live stream right now, go check out your insights if you haven't already. Analytics are your friend. And see how you're tracking week on week. I've actually looked at analytics for specific shows. So now I know certain shows perform better than others. I'm solo today. Some of my best shows I thought were going to be just guests, but some of my best shows have been ones where it's just solo, but I have a ton of conversation that I go back to. A couple weeks ago, we had a great one. We were talking about how to say no in business, which like totally resonated, which I'm totally going to do a part 2 because I think that anyone can relate to that topic. And I've had guests on my show that have been some of my best shows. I had Emily Keeley on, conversation piece, PR. This was kind of late last year. One of the best shows we had. We talked about her business in Austin. It was actually about PR. We talked about storytelling. We talked about how to be real. She talked about what it's like to be a mom and a working mother. And I think that really resonated with people. I know the majority of my followers are women, many of whom are parents. So that resonated, but I wouldn't know that if I didn't look at analytics. So if you're ever curious to see what kind of content resonates, check it out. Can I give a quick shout out to people who are watching? RJ, Karen, Danny, how are you? Good to see you. I think this might be the first time you're tuning in. Big shout out, Danny. How are you? Any questions about PR? Any questions about live streaming? I just spent a little time showing some puppies and some donuts. It's kind of easy. Talked about some great programs, and I will link to them in the comments if you're curious. Some cool things that Dunkin' Donuts did with live streaming and dogs are doing with live streaming. It's really kind of the sky's the limit. I think the live streams that are really resonating are those, I think small businesses, lean teams, startups have a huge opportunity to really leverage live streaming, not just on Facebook, by the way. We're seeing some really cool things on Instagram, like J. Crew, which is kind of a brand that's they're really having a tough time right now competing. But J. Crew has been doing some really cool things on Instagram. So when you go live on Instagram, that content kind of expires. Not like Facebook where you can kind of archive it forever. Instagram, they've been doing some really cool things. Retail fashion on Instagram, jump on Instagram. It's not just celebrities going live. You're now starting to see other brands use live streaming to do stuff like hold contests, competitions. They're doing product demos, which I think if you have something to demo that's visual, absolutely use a live stream. Before live streaming, I don't know really, the only way you would have done that is the classic PR tactic would have been you kind of keep that conversation. You would do that, you would execute that one of two ways. One is you would take it in front of analysts and media, and it would be more of a trade show thing where you'd invite kind of the gatekeepers, the media who cover your space, and you demo the product that way. And then you do another way if it was a consumer product, and you would probably do something crazy like a stunt. So in the PR world, we call it stunting. So probably some just kind of big crazy idea like dropping something from a balloon or floating something down a river or something that kind of creates a big moment in time just to get on the front pages of whatever local newspaper. Well, the technology has changed now, and while those are great ways to get in people's minds, I think live streaming is easier. It's less expensive, if not free, and it actually invites the outside in and creates more conversation. So again, now is the best time. If you're a PR team and you've been kind of scratching your head around live streaming, now is the biggest opportunity, I think, for you to actually embrace it. Now, here's the thing. Let's talk about the elephant in the room. If you're on a communications team, or maybe you're even on a marketing team, or maybe you yourself are wondering about this whole live streaming thing, I know you're worried about who is going to be on camera. You're probably even wondering if that person should be you. And while I can't convince you to go on camera, the only person who can make that decision is you. For PR people, they generally stay behind the scenes. You're not going to see a PR person speak for a brand. You don't. Their job is to help guide someone like a CEO or field marketing to be in front of the camera. So if you're a PR person and you're wondering who's going to be on camera, put your central casting hat on. And this can apply to everyone. Who is the right messenger? Who's the most kind of articulate, likable, real person? And this could be kind of a head scratcher for PR teams. Another big PR tactic, classic communications tactic, is what's called media training. They'll sit down with a CEO, CMO, or even field marketing, someone who's going to be on camera doing interviews, and they train them just to make sure that they are comfortable on camera. And there are people that are naturals, they're one takes, and there are people that require a little bit of hand-holding, and that's okay. It's not like they're feeding them the lines. It's practice like anything. If you knew you were going to sit down with Forbes, you were going to rehearse, right? Classic PR tactic. So I'm inviting PR teams, if they're wondering who that person is, you might run into a challenge. You might run into the fact that, your CEO is probably not the right person for your live stream. I think you want to look a little bit more in the weeds, because what you're going to want is someone who's not just well rehearsed, but you're going to want someone who's a natural, kind of comfortable conversationalist. And I'm going to invite you to look at your client's field marketing team, or your demo team, or your product team. People who are generally in front of people more. So when I worked at Golan, which is a great PR agency, one of our clients was Nintendo, and I loved it. My formative years were spent there. And they had an amazing field marketing team. These were people that loved video games, that were just naturals at showing. Like, I would see them at the big trade shows, and they are the people that I would think would be in my mind in terms of who would be a great host for a live stream, because they can relate to people. They can answer questions quickly. And with a little bit of training, I think they'd be perfect. This is totally different than the classic PR rule of look to the C-suite, or look to the kind of the CEO or the president to be the person on camera. Put your central casting hat on, because you're going to have to look for a different type of person. Because live streaming is a little bit more real, right? A little bit more authentic, and conversation is everything. So that would be, and I think that might be some of the hurdles that PR teams are running into right now. They don't know who to put on camera, so they're kind of avoiding this program. But I'm telling you right now, it's actually easier than you think. You're probably sitting across from, or you're two people away from the perfect person. You're just gonna have to be a casting agent for your client. Alfredo, I don't want to ignore you. You've got some great tips. Alfredo, you guys, is using live streaming for a faith-based organization, doing great things. I think I saw Pictionary pop up once. Alfredo was saying, Messenger, how about a late night talk show host? Yeah, totally agree. Totally agree. Alfredo, you've got a couple of comments I'm going to read. And if you're listening, and I always read the comments, if you're listening in on the podcast, that's what I'm doing right now. You can also see, if you jump over to my Facebook or my YouTube, the comments also pop up on the screen, if you're listening to me on the podcast for the first time. Alfredo's saying, what about NASA, National Aeronautics and Space Administration? They have social media army. Yeah, NASA is such a great example. You can what are some of the cool things they're doing, Alfredo? I feel like you can tune into mission control at any time. I actually watched Tesla, SpaceX, Elon Musk. I watched, they did a whole live stream when they were testing their rockets. It was amazing. I didn't know half of what they were saying, but it was really cool. And if you paid attention, they were really smart about who they had on camera. They had a whole mix of people, smart people, funny people, people who are so passionate about their work, people who are very, very natural on camera. You didn't have sort of stuffy scientists or kind of people who were a little out of their element. You could tell that they really thought about it. Yeah, NASA's great, SpaceX is great. IBM is a great example of social media usage too. Alfredo, these are all great examples. So you guys, if you want to see examples of people using live streaming, now, I don't know if they're using this for PR. You could probably say it's a combination. Today, we're just talking about public relations. But if your objective is, and PR contributes to sales too, but PR, if your goal is to increase engagement, create word of mouth conversation, get top of mind, resonate with your audience, and then obviously maybe from a more transactional standpoint, create sales or just drive a ton of traffic to your website. Live streaming should be at the center point of your PR. And again, going back to the editorial calendar, Freudian slip. If you're a PR person listening to this, I know that adding one more piece of content or one more content strategy, it probably makes you want to shut the door and like never come out. But I'm telling you, treat your editorial calendar now like a production calendar. You got to talk about live streaming. And live streaming, let's be fair, can be a 60-minute talk show every week, or it can be Facebook stories. It could be going live every day for 5 minutes on Instagram, whatever that means to you. And again, you're going to be effective, like anything, if you create a framework, you put thought behind it, and you're consistent. That's all it is. Live streaming is live video. So whatever that means to you, and it's certainly not isolated to one channel. You can go live on you can go live on Facebook, you can go live on YouTube, you can go live on Twitter, you can go live on Instagram easily. Obviously, you can go live on Snapchat in terms of rapid response for that. You can also go live in other ways. So you can do live streaming or you could do stories, whatever that means to you, you guys. Twitch, I know gamers that use Twitch primarily for their live streaming. So if you're in anywhere, if you have a male 18 to 34 base, look at Twitch. I use Anchor for my podcast, by the way, and this isn't about podcasts, but I'd say podcasts are in that space, kind of like stories where it's real-time content, not necessarily live, but I use an app called Anchor, which I'll link to in the comments. You can actually incorporate messages like almost in real time with your podcast now. It's crazy. So even podcasts are getting closer and closer to live. I actually treat my podcast like live. This show goes out over my podcast, and then I also do other shorter podcasts. Really cool, huh? So it's like, what is live? What is it to you? Oh my gosh. Mark Spencer, one of my favorite humans. Mark's saying, and NASA giving personalities to things like Curiosity rover, so its Twitter stream felt so much more engaging. Yes. I feel like NASA was one of the first organizations to understand how giving something a personality could really do a lot of things. I think it allows people to kind of understand maybe some significant technology. I think it makes it memorable. I'm a fan of museums that are starting to give their exhibits personalities too. Yeah. Great example, Mark. I know Mark from years ago. Kindred spirit. Good guy. How are things where you're at, Mark? In the UK. Yeah. He does great work too, you guys. Oh, the stories we could tell. Alfredo is saying, shows that have thought, content, and framework. Eddie Garrison reminded me that my content must be engaging, educational, entertaining. Just need at least one of the three. Absolutely right. A fundamental of PR is like it's storytelling, not for just storytelling sake. Again, know your audience. Know what's engaging to them. Know what is of value to them. Are you going to educate them on something? What? Make sure it's something that is of interest and entertaining. Edutainment is one of my favorite words because it's true, right? If you're just tuning in, we're talking about live streaming for PR. We've got some great examples. We've talked about NASA. We've talked about SpaceX. We've talked about Dunkin' Donuts, IBM. We've talked about the Humane Society. Basically, it's like it's easy for me because any client I bring on, I'm always going to talk about live streaming because they bring me on as their social media coach or strategist. Fine. But I'm going to challenge you. If you don't touch social media every day, to really start to think think live streaming first. Think conversation first strategies. That's at least when it comes to social media. And social media is smack dab in the center of PR. It's smack dab in the center of marketing, but it's smack dab in the center of PR. It's one of the most powerful, effective public relations tools. What else, you guys? We've talked about so many. Are any of you using live streaming? In fact, I actually know the answer to that. For those of you who are live streaming, joining me today, what is something that, because it evolves, right? My show's a little different than when I first started. I've learned some lessons. I've learned what people don't care about. I've learned what people do care about. Alfredo, Karen, RJ, I'm curious to hear from you. Have there been any epiphanies? Any surprises, anything learned along the way in your live streaming journey that you'd like to share? Because I'd like to share it for you. Because it evolves. You guys have actually inspired me, because I watch all of your shows, whether it comes to style, intros, outros. I mean, I've studied all of you guys, and it's like I respect all of your shows individually. What are some epiphanies? What are some surprises? Anything reveal themselves along the way as you've live streamed? I've discovered that, and it's not just the algorithm, but I've discovered now that I've combined live streaming or actually put it at the center of anything I do, whether it's PR marketing, I'm now getting feedback from other channels, or I'm being introduced to people that wouldn't have found me any other way. That's important feedback, because that tells me, all right, this is working. And it's been interesting to follow the breadcrumbs of how people find me now. And it's typically through my show. That was a big piece of feedback. Before, it was mostly word of mouth. I've got a strong word of mouth funnel. It's great. I'm really honored and lucky to have that. But now I'm starting to hear from people that would have never found me or heard of me if it wasn't for my show or a rerun of my show, which is amazing because there's no way that I would have been able to reach them. Mark Spencer, who hails from the UK, by the way, is saying a few bands over here are getting into live streaming, but it seems quite scattershot and not hung off a coherent plan. This sprung to mind mainly as I've been pulled back into the music again. I know. Mark is an amazing guitarist. You actually make your own guitars. I've been watching. Musician. That's really cool. I think for bands, it's a huge opportunity too, to sample their music or to get on it. But like anything, it's like you need a plan. I think like anything right now, it's easy to flail. It's easy to overexert yourself if you don't have a plan. Like anything, if you're going to spend your time doing something, create a plan around it. And live streaming, you could just spin out and feel like you're like anything. You could waste a lot of time. But like I said, just sit down, put a plan together, think about what you want to convey. And if you bring it back to the PR fundamentals, it's like, just know your audience. So if you're a band, where's your audience? Use that channel for live streaming. Ask them, tweet them, post, chat, ask at your next concert on the mic. Like, what do they want to hear? What do they want to see? Is it a meet and greet? Do they want to see how you create a song? Is it inviting the outside in? Like, here's a tried and true PR tactic. Ask for the ideas. Have the audience tell you what they want to see or hear, and then wrap your show around that. Then you're not sitting there scratching your head. If you're a band, your fans will tell you what they want to see or hear. And then you have your idea. Now all you have to worry about is executing it. RJ is responding to my question a little earlier. What have you learned? She says several things. The latest, it's about building community more than anything else. Even if I'm teaching a topic that 1,000 others have already done, my crowd wants to hear from me. Absolutely. Live streaming is a powerful tool when it comes to personal brand, because conversation and chemistry, if conversation and chemistry are your most powerful assets, and I'm talking to experts, coaches, people who are their brand, people who are the face of their company, live streaming is absolutely a powerful tool. For me, it is, I know. And it sounds like for RJ, it is for you too. RJ has a great, warm, funny, wicked smart style. It resonates with me. We've done work together. I trust her. There are other people in her space. They don't necessarily resonate with me. They're doing live streams, totally great, but they don't jive with me. I don't, for some reason, but for RJ and I, we click. And that's a huge thing that you can't fake. Or at least we know when you're faking. In a live stream, it's like you just being yourself isn't a cliche. It's the best opportunity for your business, because authenticity is one of the most powerful tools on social media. 8 out of 10 consumers will purchase or buy from a brand they trust. And what builds trust? Be freaking real, man. One of the reasons I chose to work with RJ is because I was like, I like her. She's warm. She's funny. I don't think she's going to talk over me. I think she's going to teach me. She seems patient. All these things to me that I knew were ticking my boxes, right? Versus another person where I'm like, I don't think we'd really get along. It's all about chemistry, right? And that's why I think putting your central casting hat on and choosing the right person to be on camera, it doesn't have to be a painful experience, but just put the time in so you make sure you have the right person on camera. Oh, she says, you're so kind. Girl, it's true. I'm not going to lie about it. Hilarious, by the way, RJ. Great humor. If you just want to laugh, just got a black belt bots. Just talk about creating personality in your brand. RJ's been a guest on my show. You might recognize her. We talked about chatbots. And again, if you want to know how the heck a chatbot works, go ahead and message me the word guest. Message me the word I'm ready. It's a phrase. Message me the phrase I'm ready, and I will introduce you to a brand new Facebook Live challenge. Fun little game we created in Messenger if you want to see how to use a Facebook chatbot. Also, if you are curious about doing a live, if you haven't started one, you can reach out to me a couple ways. Laughing and learning, my favorite combo, right? If it's not enjoyable, what the heck are we doing here? Seriously. Looks like we have Nancy tuning in, one of my favorite humans. Those of you who know me know why. My biggest fan. What else, you guys? Again, we're talking about live streaming for PR. Any questions about PR? I'll see if I can answer. I don't always talk about it. But maybe I do. I don't know. It's just ingrained in everything. I know, but I came up through PR, went to school for communications. First 15 years of my career, I was PR, worked at some great agencies. What else? I'm talking about PR, live streaming for PR. I'm just going to do a quick double check to make sure. Can you guys hear me okay and see me okay? Go ahead and type someone in there, not everyone. Someone in there, just type yes if you can see me okay, just to make sure. My internet's running a little slow. Easy peasy, ketchup squeezy. I had no idea that I was going to embrace live streaming years ago. It's been kind of a whirlwind. I find it incredibly rewarding. And I'm an introvert, y'all. What else? Mark, you betcha. Oh, thanks, Alfredo. You can hear me. Yes. I don't know how we've come up to the top of the hour, but what I'd like to do is, RJ, great comment. Let me read this off. Live streaming helps you reach out so much. I don't know where I'd be without it. Totally, totally true. Absolutely. We've talked about things we've learned. We've talked about other examples. If you're curious, by the way, to find other live streaming, let me show you a little trick. I think I've showed it to you guys in this one, but if you're listening on the podcast, I'm going to talk you through this the next time you're on Facebook. And again, I'm just using Facebook examples because we're on Facebook right now. But just open up your phone and you can see who's live streaming on Instagram and Periscope. Facebook is alive and well. I know there's a lot of people talking about abandoning ship. I just don't think that's the reality. All right, let me show you a really quick trick. How to find other live shows right now on Facebook. And I know a lot of the folks in here are live streamers, but let me actually show you something that I learned not too long ago. If you ever want to know where other live shows are. And I'm just going to share my desktop again. And again, if you're listening to me on the podcast, you can jump over to Facebook or my YouTube channel and see what I'm talking about. Boom. Y'all see me? Of course, Meowingtons is up. Of course. Cats, guys, my world is cats. Okay, so if you're ever curious about like, hey, because I always like to do this. I always like to see what other people are doing. I learn from example. I like to get other examples. If you're on Facebook, just go up here and click live, enter. For those of you listening right now, I'm in Facebook. I literally went up to the little search bar, and I literally typed the word live. If you're on your phone, you're going to see immediately who you're following, who's live in those circles. But if you're on your desktop, here's a little trick I learned. Just type in the word live. You're going to see huge live red box, Facebook shortcuts. It's going to say live video. Here are all the live videos happening right now. And I apologize in advance for what you're going to see, although Facebook's been getting better at cracking down. A lot of gaming. No surprise. A lot of sports, a lot of gaming, a lot of media. But you're starting to see some other stuff. Every now and then I see nonprofits. I see local bakeries. I saw a fashion show the other day. I saw a realtor the other day. I see financial planners, right? But if you're ever curious what's going on live right now, you just go in the search bar on Facebook and you just hit live. Little trick I learned. I do that maybe once a day just to see what's out there. Because for me, it's like I need to pay attention to the climate. For you, maybe not so much. Here's a question. For my live streamers on the line, where do you live stream? Is it Facebook? Is it Instagram? Where is it? Is it both? I know the answer to some of this, but I'm lobbing it out for people listening. Where do you live stream? Where do you push your live videos? Is the question. See if we get a couple good answers from that. Right now, I live stream mainly to Facebook. I've been doing a few Instagram lives. I'm going to be doing that more. I actually use a few tools that push my videos out to YouTube. And I'm going to start using the YouTube desktop live capability. Where do you live stream? Curious. Just going through the agenda, making sure I've hit everything. We talked about what live streaming is and how it's done. We talked about live streaming trends. I kind of pointed out some brands, hopefully, and I'll link to them in the comments. Don't worry. YPR teams are the ideal live streaming partner. We're conversationalists, y'all. Okay, here's an important one I think I can end with. How to start the live conversation with clients is easier than you think. Hold that thought. In my own metrics, I did go over how using live video permanently improved my engagement, reach, and revenue. 130% increase in engagement. My reach went up by 10x. It has brought in revenue for me. My guests on my show have turned into clients. I've brought clients in for my one-on-one coaching, for my campaigns, and I've enrolled students in my course. All through awareness created only by my show. Pretty positive feedback. Okay, so the question is, where do you live stream? And while we get those yummy answers, let me go ahead and hit the very last bullet. How to start the live conversation with clients. Now, I know this can be hairy, especially for those of you working in PR. How do you start the live streaming conversation with clients? Because you can't get beyond the fact that there's a camera involved. Can't escape that. That goes back to my my tips earlier about getting your central casting hat on. You probably have someone who with a little bit of training is actually perfect for live streaming. You just are going to have to open yourself up to looking in other areas. It's probably not going to be your chief marketing officer. It's you know, it might not even be anyone in your C-suite. It could be someone from your demo team or field marketing or customer service who might not have even been hired for this. You know, one thing you can do is talk to your client and just have a conversation about live content. And just say, just for kicks, who's got a personality in your organization? I bet you and your client can think of at least a short list of 3 people. Just say, training aside, responsibilities aside, who's really good with people? Who really knows your industry? Maybe you have a bona fide historian, someone who's worked at the organization for 15 years. They could work in HR. They could have bounced around. Maybe they work in product testing. Maybe they're a manager now, whatever. But maybe they exude the culture and they just embody it. This is probably someone who's really popular at like Christmas parties. Maybe you always make them in the MC of something. Think about those traits that make someone a really good conversationalist, but again, who embodies the organization, who can probably speak to things with ease, and with a little bit of training is actually probably fine on camera. That's probably your live streamer. Now, you want to back up that conversation with strategy. Like anything, again, if you're on the PR side, you could say, well, as we would sit down and train you for media training, we're going to have to train Joe or Pat or Sean or Alice or whatever. So all you do is build that into your plan. And what this might mean is you might have to lighten up on other areas where you've been maybe executing forever. But what it's going to do is going to show the client that you are thinking ahead. You are thinking in terms of the technology. You're putting them first. And you could be opening your client up to a tremendous opportunity, a new thing to do on social media, a brand new way to breathe life into maybe their customer service or whatever. And chances are they're going to be on board. Just treat it as like a small test program. That's how I would recommend going into the conversation. Just give them the visual. Allow them to visualize really great conversations, meaningful conversations, and use those examples I gave you. There's no way they can't be impressed by that. And even if they have to set it off, it's your job as the PR team to commit to bring that conversation back. If it affects their bottom line, they're going to listen to you. Mark. Still yet to factor it into my music work, but looking mainly at Facebook. Mark, that makes sense. Yeah. Live streaming is easier than you think. I would recommend, if you haven't live streamed yet, just start on Facebook. But again, know your audience. If your audience is 35 and up, Facebook is cool. If you're looking to hit a younger audience, you might want to think of something like a Periscope. Periscope seems to be pretty popular at concerts. Who knows? Probably because you can get on Twitter easier with Wi-Fi sometimes than Facebook. You might want to think about doubling up on several different ways to stream live during your concert. Maybe it's a green room session. You posted an awesome photo the other day of, I think, your band, and then there was a coat rack, and their heads were like hidden, so it looked like they were all getting their perms it was funny. Your caption was funny. You have the humor there. So maybe it's like, do you do a pre-show ritual? You could quickly live stream, set it up on the Facebook page or tweet it out. That would be hilarious. RJ goes, she live streams to Facebook and YouTube. Wicked, RJ. RJ Red and Black Belt Bots. If you're curious, jump over to her pages and check out her live streams. Cool beans. Guys, I don't know. It's already been an hour. Can you imagine? So this is one half of the time I will devote to my social media marketing this week. Right? Get it? If you're curious about live streaming, reach out. I have a course. Right now I'm doing a promotion where you get a month off. It's called Live Show Mastery. You don't have to complete the course. You're going live the first night. It starts you off. Every month you get a toolkit. Plus you have a private community. If you really want to learn how to do live streaming, I've put all of this into a package, and you can learn from me. I go live every week. Reach out. It's called Live Show Mastery. It's $35 a month. You get a month free. I am enrolling now. I am shutting the doors pretty soon. But if you're curious, if this has convinced you to just check it out, reach out. Reach out, DM me, message me the words Live Show Mastery, or drop me a DM or anonymous if you want. I will tell you more. If you're curious about going live for the first time and you just want to try it out, I do have that Facebook Live Challenge game. Reach out and I will send you a link to that. Created by the fabulous RJ Redden. It's my Facebook Live challenge. It's a multi-day challenge, and every day I'll challenge you to do something really quick and super simple. It's really just to get you up on Facebook Live and build confidence. Don't worry about it. It's a lot of fun. What else, you guys? Live streaming for PR. It's the best, and I would think the most cost-effective strategy right now. You do not need money to start this thing. You just need time. Well, time and technology. You need a smartphone or, and an okay internet and some earbuds most of the time. I would just encourage you, if you haven't, to do it already. And if you're curious, if you're watching this, maybe you're watching it on the replay and you need examples, look at all the people commenting. They're live streaming too. Check out their pages and their profiles. If you're listening to me on the podcast, I will link to, you can always find me through social. I'll link to this there. You can see all of the examples, right? Go for it. All right, you guys, that kind of wraps it up for me. Any other questions? I'm going to let you go. Tuesday. You can find me every Tuesday, 8 a.m. Pacific here on Jessica Payne Live. Thanks for tuning in. If you're watching on the replay, thank you. If you're watching me live, I super appreciate it. If you're curious about, because I know a lot of you are on the go and you've been asking about the podcast, it's now on iTunes. I use Anchor to podcast out, so I'm on iTunes and Google Play. If you want to subscribe to that podcast, let me know. You can just find me in iTunes. You just search my name, Jessica Payne, Payne, and you'll find me. Or you can visit my website and find all the channels there. I know some of you like to watch. I know some of you are runners, or you take public transportation and you like to listen to podcasts. Well, now this show and other elements of me are now on podcast. So that's recently new. I'm very excited about it. All right, you guys, happy live streaming, happy storytelling. Thanks so much for joining me. Again, I'll be back next week, and it should be a fun time. Any questions about live streaming in general, you can always comment me or DM me. I'm always happy to help. This has been Live Streaming for PR. Thanks for listening. You guys have a beautiful week. Have a good one. Bye.